when Jeffrey started DreamWorks Animation, he set out to create an environment that would be fertile soil for artists and filmmakers and technicians to come and create and tell stories and create images and actually share their voices and their diverse, unique experiences through filmmaking with the world. And I'm actually excited to have the team here today because they actually represent a very interesting cross-section of both the world and also of our two studios, because when we talk about inside the studio, we actually are two campuses. We are in Glendale, California. We have about 1,700 people in Glendale. And then in Redwood City, up in Northern California, we have another 450 people. And those two groups together, of all of that, 1,600 of those people are actually artists, people who are working on films and making films. And so it's a very artist-driven and very artistic culture that we have at the studio. So I think just to get us started, I think it would be great for each of you to kind of introduce yourselves, talk about how you came to DreamWorks and just what your background is and some of the key highlights of the things that you've done at the studio.
Let's see. I was an art student, so I draw and paint, and I worked as an editorial illustrator for many years after I graduated from art school, and really had no intention of doing animation until I got a call from a friend, a teacher actually, who had been asked to art direct Tim Burton's Nightmare Before Christmas. And I had just moved to San Francisco, and it just so happened that my personal kind of illustration style was very similar to how Tim drew. And so they hired me, and I got in. And so it was Tim Burton that kind of got me in. I was a huge fan, and that's why I did it. And I realized once I was there that, not only could I draw and paint like I always did, but I could build models, I could, be involved in being actually down on those cool miniature sets and painting them, doing scenic, helping with the lighting, working on puppets, and then it was shot on film for the world to see. So it sort of fulfilled all these great, artistic aspirations I had, and I got completely hooked. So from there, and that was actually Jeffrey's movie. Mm-hmm. And I've kind of worked with him my whole animation career, which is kind of funny. I went from that to James and the Giant Peach, and then joined DreamWorks after that film to do Ants. It was an incredible time in animation when all that happened. And I remember the studio, Skellington Productions, where we were working on those films. Half of us went to Pixar and half of us went to DreamWorks. There were two, exciting studios in our area and in LA that were happening at the same time. It was this brand new medium that we knew nothing about. And I actually went to DreamWorks mostly because of Woody Allen, because I thought it would be really cool to do a Woody Allen film. And, it's been a great environment, and I've stayed ever since because of the creative environment there. Yeah.
Great. Doug, do you want to?
Sure. I had both a circuitous route, but also I can honestly say I've worked in entertainment my entire career. I started as a theater usher at the local movie house when I was in high school, picking up popcorn, cleaning gum off the seats and stuff like that. But I also remember the point where I really got into the entertainment, the media business. I was looking for a summer job that was maybe a little bit more than that. And I was 16, 17 years old. I just gotten my first car. I needed to make car payments and insurance and that sort of stuff. And I was trying to explain to my mom that, well, I like computers, I like to draw, I like art, and I want something that'll combine those two things together. She's like, that's nice. Here are the classified ads. Go find something realistic. And so I start going through the classified ads. I'm like this, see, computer production artist right here. And sure enough, there was a small multimedia company in San Diego that was colorizing black and white films, and they were hiring entry-level positions for people who had basic drawing skills and understood how to use computers. And I went and applied to it and found myself colorizing black and white movies for the first year of my career. I never left, though. And I never left that side of the business. Actually, that led me to opportunities working in animation at Amblimation in London, which is an incredible opportunity for me to go and move there when I was 19 years old. And I took it, I grabbed it, I ran with it. I worked on 2 feature films there at Amblimation, and just as Amblimation was closing, that was Steven Spielberg's animation company in London. Just as Amblimation was closing, DreamWorks was starting up. And I remember the day that Jeffrey Katzenberg came over and actually recruited a whole bunch of people from Amblimation. And what so impressed me was that he met in small groups of like 3 or 4 people with every one of us that he wanted to invite over to DreamWorks to tell us what the studio was about and what they were founding, and invite us to come be a part of it. And it just to have someone at that level of the studio sort of personally meet with you in such an intimate way and tell you what they wanted was just really exciting. And the idea of starting a new studio, the idea of challenging, the way of thinking about how we're approaching movies and what kind of movies we're going to make was incredibly appealing to me. And so I came to DreamWorks in summer of 1995, and the entrepreneurial spirit, the enthusiasm, the excitement has kept me there ever since. I feel like I've always had new opportunities, and it's just something I've never even considered not doing.
Jason?
Sure. So I kind of got into the industry through a not really roundabout way, but I started getting into it when I went to university. I didn't have very good drafting skills, so I went to UC Santa Barbara, which is not really known for its art or filmmaking capability. It's known for drinking. A lot of drinking. UCSB stands for You Can't Study Buzzed, from what I understand. And I was taking communications classes, so I was doing a lot of psychology and sociology and understanding how to kind of create a message and transmit it to people. And I would be in like 800-person lecture halls. And one of my roommates was a phenomenal painter. And so I'd come back from class with books and things to read, and he'd come back from class covered in gesso and paint with pictures of naked people. And I thought that was a way more fun college experience than what I was having. So I took a Photoshop class and absolutely fell in love with it. I just found it fascinating and amazing and a lot of fun. And I loved animation my entire life. So I actually got The Illusion of Life, which, how many of you have read The Illusion of Life before or heard of it? It's an amazing book kind of about the history of animation. And my girlfriend at the time hated animation. So I'd go into the bathroom so I could read it. She'd be like, "What are you doing in there?" "No, it's really, I had a big burrito. I just loved it. And luckily, a company that was in Santa Barbara was making 3D animation software called Wavefront. And right at the time when I was looking to learn more about animation and really get into the industry, another company called SGI bought them and a company called Alias in Toronto and merged the two together. And they created an animation package called Maya. They were just getting started with that, and they needed interns. So I interned at Alias Wavefront, learned how to use Maya, and then would travel to different studios to go and teach the artists there how to use it, and then come back and give information to the developers about what artists wanted and what they didn't. So I got to go to DreamWorks and got to go to Sony and Disney and DreamQuest and all these places just to meet artists, which was phenomenal. Amazing, amazing experience. And then in about 1999, there was a small company making a little independent picture or series of pictures called The Lord of the Rings. Some of you may have heard of it somewhere. They were in New Zealand and they needed people who knew Maya. So I went over to New Zealand and worked on all 3 Lord of the Rings pictures, which was an amazing experience, doing live action and learning really about how to animate in a production studio. And then after doing that for about 4 years, I really wanted to push my skills in more of a cartoony style of animation and really just enjoy that aspect of it, and luckily DreamWorks was hiring at the time. So I came over right at the end of Shrek 2, and my first project was Madagascar, which was awesome. Super, super cartoony.
Yeah, you're the king of King Julian.
Yeah, he was a lot of fun. He was great. I loved King Julian.
Yeah.
He was super fun to animate on. So, and then I've been there ever since, 10 years ago.
Great. And Christophe?
So first of all, I have to apologize for the accent, But if everything goes well and if you guys listen carefully, by the end of the lecture, you should be fluent in French. So cool. So I grew up in south of France, so really far away from Los Angeles. So I'm going to tell you the path to make it to America. So I always drew when I was a kid, and I discovered I did a lot of stop motion. When I was a teenager, I bought some plastilin and do a lot of stop motion for myself, and plastiline actually melt under a lamp. So I learned really fast that you have to use other materials. Luckily, when I was 15, I went to an art school. It was a boarding school, so I was living, sleeping there, and we learned a lot about art at the time. So it was a great school, learning about photography, illustration, live drawings, and you name it. But that's not what I wanted to do. I wanted to do animation, but again, south of France, to do animation is not the best place to be, and didn't have any idea, how to do it. I come across, Illusion of Life as well. I remember. The only problem is it was a really expensive book. There was only one book into one store, and I didn't have the money for it. So I remember that I had to hide the book somewhere, like in the store somewhere, and I was collecting my money, and every 15 days I was checking if the book was there, and I was just come back in a month. And finally, after a month, I did collect the right money, and I bought the book, which I read carefully. And because I read it carefully and I was tracing all of the drawing inside, I got into the school called the Goblin School. It's an animation school in Paris. And, it was really the beginning of the animation world right here, great school. They actually don't teach you anything, which might make it a great school, They just hired a lot of people. I mean, it's a really tight selection of artists. They give you an assignment and they come back 2 weeks later. So the emulation, all the students, being together and working together make the movies that we made, which was really a funny way to teach, and I always loved it, actually. Then after that school, I got hired by Disney, and I thought it was a treat at the time, but I hated it. I didn't like Disney whatsoever. It was really, it was Disney France at the time. They had a branch in Paris, and really pretentious, and everything that we learned suddenly, they told us, put that in the gutter, you're going to start from scratch, I'm like, oh, in 2 years of animation, there's no way, So, stayed there for maybe 2 years, worked on a Goofy movie and the beginning of Hunchback, and I resigned from Disney. Someone hired me at this point. It was my teacher from school, which I got along really well. His name was Bibo, and worked at DreamWorks after for different movies, and really Bibo gave me the chance really to reinvent myself and to be really free. And his company was based on we had to do commercials and work like those, and with those money, it was basically half for the company, half for us. And when we had enough money, he was embracing the fact of doing short and personal project, and it was exactly what I needed. Therefore, we did those commercials, and when we had enough money, we did personal project. So I did with a friend. I did something really silly. I have an episode, but I don't have it here. And but that episode particularly actually received a lot of attention from a channel in France called Canal+, and they hired us to do 30 more. But right at the beginning, I did 3 episodes of those, DreamWorks called Bibo at the time, asking him if he wanted to come by to DreamWorks and check it out. They were opening their doors. It was 96, and, it was for Prince of Egypt. And they asked Bibo as well if he knew some people around that would be interested. And it's good because there's always a part of luck, I have to say, in career like that. There's a lot it's about work, and there's a chunk also that suddenly, the stars are in position, and, they're smiling for you, and it happened for me. So Bibo asked me to come along, so I took the plane, went to the States with my big portfolio, and got hired at the time for Prince of Egypt as a layout artist. So it was doing, those big drawings in graphite, and I actually loved it. I learned a lot on that movie. That and El Dorado was really the movies where I really learned all the craft that I'm using even today. And I've been there since, and I can call DreamWorks my home.